founder of Girl Genius, and I'm super excited that you guys are dedicating your Friday night towards coming to our workshop. Just a few little announcements. Um, because you guys have joined our workshop, you're going to be automatically added to our mailing list where you will give priority registration for our upcoming workshops. We have one tomorrow where I'm doing a how to get internships workshop, and Audrey Pay is doing a networking from home workshop on Sunday. And we have a lot more fun activities like this for you guys coming up. And because Shreya is doing a community workshop today, we decided to launch our community Slack. You guys will be getting a personal invite to that as soon as this workshop ends, if you haven't already. So yeah, I'm so excited that all of you are here, and thank you so much.
Thanks so much. I'm really excited. I'm super impressed with this team. It was really organized, and you attracted an amazing group of people. So I'm really excited to talk about community today. So I have, my name is Shreya. I am founder of the Violet Society. Basically, I started this organization and company back in 2013 when I was in college at Tufts University. Tufts didn't have a really big kind of startup scene, and so I went to our entrepreneurship club, and I wanted to meet people that I could start startups with, and everyone there was a guy, and they didn't really want to start anything with me. So that kind of sparked my passion and interest in helping more female and non-binary people break into tech, find their community, find their friends, find their tribe, and build cool things together and learn cool things together. So today's workshop is definitely interactive. I'm going to tell a little bit of concepts about what I've learned about building community, how it's different than media, what you can learn from building a community yourself, and what kind of value you can get out of it, kind of especially in the context of starting a startup or starting a side project. And I'd love to just take questions at any time. Just write them in the chat as you think of them. Like, definitely don't hesitate to ask any random questions. I might not answer them immediately, but I'll get to them by the end. And there are a few times I want to like ask everyone some questions, and so I'll say that you can unmute your mic and say something out loud. Is that cool? Yeah. All right, so let's get started. Okay, can everyone see my screen, Community 101? It's purple. Can you give me a thumbs up? Is it full screen? Yeah, cool. Okay, so this workshop's Community 101, how and why to build a powerful community of customers, advocates, and friends. So this is really, I distilled a lot of the things I learned from building Facebook groups and the Violet Society and a few other communities, particularly for like women in tech, but also in general, I think this applies to just building strong communities overall. So today's workshop, I'm going to talk about kind of what community is and is not, why early stage founders, I would recommend that you start by building a community instead of media. I think that both, if you look in the next couple slides, I'll talk about how they're basically a continuum, but I think that it's really crucial to make sure that the people who are your customers and the people who are your advocates, they talk to each other and learn from each other instead of just consuming media that you produce. And then I'll talk about kind of how to launch and grow your first community. And then I found this very useful tool called a community canvas online, and we'll kind of walk you through how to fill that out yourself. All along the way, again, really happy to answer questions, and I want to make this really useful for you. So here's the first prompt. What's a great community that you're part of, and what makes it great? And community, I would love to hear like how you define it. And so kind of think big. Personally, one that I would say is my college Bollywood dance team was a community that I really loved being part of. It was very small, but it was very tight knit, and we became like lifelong friends, lived together, really kept in touch for a long time. And so that's a community that has had a really meaningful impact for me. What made it great was we met at least twice a week for the entire school year for 4 to 5 years on end. And that really brought us together because it was a big part of our lives. We also did like away competitions at different schools and would take trips together. And I think that those made the relationships a lot stronger and deeper. And we didn't just like hang out. We obviously were also a dance team. So there was some kind of purpose that we all were brought together for. So I'd love to hear from someone. You can just unmute yourself and say a community that you're part of.
I guess since I already kind of mentioned Built by Girls, I'll go with that. I'm a part of their like Slack channel, and there's like a, almost 2,000 girls on there, I think, and it's really cool to kind of ask your questions on college and on building things and just girls helping each other out on life and networking in general. Um, and that kind of goes into why it makes it great, because I wouldn't have been able to meet these people and get answers, I guess, for the questions that I had if I wasn't a part of this community. And so, yeah.
Love that example. Yeah, there's a clear purpose. There's things that you're teaching one another. There's a place that you're all coming together regularly. And people were brought together over that same interest and the overlapping goals. What's another example? Maybe something that's like far away from tech. Does anyone else want to unmute and share?
Yeah, I'll share. So one community that I really enjoy being part of is my theater community. So I participate in musical theater every year or so, and there's like all these people that come together to put together a production. And honestly, I can say that from doing musical theater, I've made some of my best friends through musical theater, and I've like maintained relationships with them, and it didn't even have to be like that long. Like most of my closest friends I've only known for a couple of years, but it feels like I've known them forever. And it's just a great community. Everyone's really supportive and kind. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So all of us, I think, we're seeing the common threads are people where people become friends and connect with each other. And there's a big difference between people coming together because they're listening to one person, it's kind of top down, versus connecting with one another and exchanging information and becoming friends with each other. So I'd like to start with what community isn't. So sometimes I use Kim Kardashian as an example. I'm not a Kardashian hater, actually. I think that they do a lot of clever things, even though they do also a lot of harmful things. So a little bit of a gray area there. But I think that influencers in general, they often call their follower community, they call their followers a community. And they say, oh, I love this like 5 million person community. In reality, if you walked up to someone on the street and you both found out that you followed the same influencer, would you really feel connected to them? Does that really feel like a community? I would say no. Just because you're listening to the same person and their content, you might have some things in common, but you don't really have what makes something a community and what distinguishes it from media, which is connections to one another between the nodes, not just like, oh, you're all listening to the same person. So as another example, subtle Asian traits. Gigantic Facebook group, super fun, 1.7 million people. I've had a lot of fun like looking at memes and tagging friends and feeling connected in that way, but I wasn't necessarily making new friends through subtle Asian traits. I was really just interacting with my existing friends. So I think that this is an example of something that's not really a community. It is more kind of media. It's like they're sharing. You can submit your memes and get them shared by the page, but you're not really like talking to each other and making new connections and friends. So related, I think that a lot of big B2B tech companies will launch these forum groups and they'll say, we have a community now. This is our Salesforce community and this is our whatever community. And it's not really a community. People join that and they basically just ask customer support questions. So I would call those not a real community because people are not actually connecting with each other over a lot of like shared intention and purpose. They're just all using the same software. So now what community is, if you think about how people engage with one another online on this continuum. So you engage less if you're just consuming something. So if you're reading a blog, you're just consuming it, you're looking at it, and that's like the lowest end of the engagement on this continuum. And then maybe you participate, maybe you like comment on it, or you kind of connect somehow. Create is when you really pass a barrier of creating something new instead of just consuming something that someone else has put in front of you. Connect is when you talk to other people around you. Advocate is when you invite people. And then lead is when you start to lead it yourself. So let me give an example of behaviors in a Facebook group. So if the way that you can think about this continuum is like, if you think of Facebook groups that you're in where you're just a lurker, you're really on this end where you're just scroll through posts, you consume, but you don't really touch the rest of this. If you're instead in a Facebook group that you started and you grow and you're the person posting the most, then you're really leading at this end. And all of this is to say, like, this is how you can think about building a community, and you can think about what's the difference between me launching an Instagram page for my project and me launching a Slack or Facebook community for my project, or an email list, or some kind of like group where we regularly talk on a video chat once a week. There's a big difference between just consuming and liking versus actually like bringing people in, inviting them, creating things yourself. So I would say that if the most common behaviors are consuming and participating, then it's really media, not a community, regardless of where your group is located. So if you're using Instagram for people to make friends in the comments, then you're using it a little bit more like a community than like media. Versus if you're using it and people are just scrolling and clicking like, then you're really just using it as media. People aren't interacting with each other and they're not really developing relationships from it. If a lot of people are commenting, posting, if they're DMing each other, let's say like with this example below in a Facebook group, that's an active and engaged community. That's something where people are actually talking, taking it to individual relationships and making it stronger over time. And then the kind of like holy grail, what you really want is a super engaged community where people are leading things themselves and they're advocating and telling friends to join. So I'll use a couple more examples. Do people know what the wing is? I don't know if there's like a age barrier. But so basically the wing is a co-working space, a network of co-working spaces across the country, and there's one in London where they run a lot of community events too. And so it's focused on women, and it's focused on women connecting with other women and helping people across different industries. Very fun. I'm a member of the co-working space because I was using it while I was building my company. And there's different ways that you can get engaged. So here I put in this like less engagement area a screenshot of their Instagram. There's some people who just look at the wing Instagram and they just look at kind of the events that they run and they're like, oh yeah, like I like the wing, I follow the wing, I see some things that they post, they seem cool. Then there's people who are actual members. They work out of the co-working space. This here is a screenshot of an Insta story that I posted while I was at an event. These are people who are participating. They're using the product by signing up for the co-working space. They've made friends in this space, and they're actually like feel like it's a part of their lives. And then the most extreme engagement level is the people who are actually taking it into their own hands to lead their own thing. So my friends and I hosted a panel at the wing, and at that point I really felt like I was more part of the community than when I was just sitting and listening to other people talk, because they said like, okay, you get to host something yourself. And what I would recommend for everyone who's trying to build a community of people around any kind of interest or thing that you all like, any shared thing, is give people opportunities to step up and lead themselves. And that's really how it can become more powerful and move beyond just people consuming. I'm going to skip the next example. Okay, so I think a way to think about it also, if you're starting a startup or you're trying to figure out if there's like a project that you want to build with people, is 500 followers on media on like Instagram or Twitter, I would say can give you kind of the same value as 50 community members in a really active Facebook group, or like 5 close friends who are really strong advocates. But in order to build those really strong advocates, I think it's super hard. You have to give them something that's really valuable first. And so I recommend that people start by building a community, because it's not too hard to get that many people if you start with friends, but you can still get like a lot of positive return back. So I'm going to pause here and see if people have questions. Does anyone have any questions? I think that I saw a couple.
I kind of have a question. I'm not quite sure how to word it, but
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you know like Volunteer Match by chance.
No, I haven't heard of it.
Oh, okay. It's like where like nonprofits and like people are matched together. I'm trying to build something like that for teens. Um, but I'm not quite sure like how this would apply necessarily in that sense, in terms of creating like a Slack channel or a community in that way for that type of startup. I don't know if I
Um,
explained that correctly, but
Can you explain what Volunteer Match does?
oh, they like match kind of like a person by like their interest to like a volunteer opportunity, or a nonprofit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that so one thing that I've seen a lot of people do is they try and start with the one-on-one matching program with instead of putting people together in a way that they can match with each other. So I see a lot of like mentor matching and different matching programs say like, okay, fill out this Google form and then we'll match you in pairs. And the problem is that like it's really hard to predict if those pairs are going to work out. Like just think if somebody else was choosing your friends for you and they were just like, oh yeah, like we suggest this friend. You would want to be able to say like, well, this person wasn't really my ideal friend necessarily. So like, who are the other people? Can I see the other options? Can I maybe like go to a video call with 8 people and then figure out if one of them is someone I'd really get along with? So I would recommend instead of doing that like one-on-one thing where the rest of the group is really not transparent, you put people together in a Facebook group or Slack community or some other kind of group where they can connect with each other. And then on top of that, you can say, okay, now that all these people are together, we can help connect you individually with people who we think you'd get along with. Does that make sense? Yes. Cool. Does one more question and then I'll get back to the rest of it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm always curious to know how to bring that engagement between each other. Um, Sometimes especially if you're starting out a community on Slack or even Facebook group, how do you know, bring value to, I guess, your community and then kind of allow them to kind of pick it up and initiate topics and interests and questions?
Yeah, so I think this is a super common question. Everyone's like, okay, I have this little group of people and now they're not doing anything with each other. And so what do I do? I recommend that so I'm going to say this later and I'll just like kind of give a quick overview before I elaborate on it later. But I'd recommend that you become the most active person. You get to personally understand what people are looking for. When you find out what kinds of questions they have and what things they need help with, then start facilitating like Q&A in the group. I think that like there was a question in the sign up form where someone was like, I want to start a community, but I don't like posting on social media. What do I do? I don't really like posting on social media either. I think that part of the reason that I got into community building is because it's less about graphics and it's more about questions and answers. And like, you know, this from the Facebook groups that we're in together, the bread and butter of them is people asking for help and giving help. And it's just that back and forth. And they happen to be about tech and startups, but let's say that it was a group about like fashion recommendations. That back and forth and facilitating people asking questions and helping each other and going out of their way to do that give and take would be the real thing that you wanted. But at the beginning, people might be scared or intimidated to share their questions. So you have to both demonstrate these are the kinds of questions you can ask and this is what you do, and also get to know them individually so they feel safe and warm and welcome, and DM them and be like, hey, like, nice to meet you. Like, let's keep going with the clothing thing and say like, why did you join this group? What do you want to learn about? And they'll be like, well, like I always look at my closet in the morning and don't know what to wear. And I'm kind of sick of the same thing. And you're like, cool. Like, here's a magazine that really inspired me. And have you looked into this brand? And like, what's the price point that you're looking at? Maybe I can help. And, oh, you should post that in the group, and kind of just be that helpful person. It's very manual. It's not that easy. It's definitely going to take a lot of time, but I think that that really pays off and sparks the activity. Was that helpful? Okay, so one last one and then I'll get back to it. Garima said, as communities grow, while there's tremendous support, there's also an increase in criticism. So what advice would you give to prevent criticism or not let it affect you? Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's kind of true when what you read about celebrities with like haters. There's going to be people who critique what you do, no matter what you're doing. And if you do anything interesting, there will be people criticizing it. I would recommend let's take the context of a community. There will be people who maybe say like, I've definitely gotten people who DM me and were like, why is this just for women? Or I didn't like this person posting blah, blah, blah. And I think that you have to be very clear, first of all, like what's the code of conduct? What's the purpose of this group? What are the boundaries of what's allowed to post and what's not? And then you have to always follow that, even if your friends are the ones who are breaking the rules. You have to be able to say to your friend, like, hey, the group's not for that. Now, if somebody's saying something really negative, I usually just, I'm pretty like liberal with banning people. I don't worry that much. And if somebody's acting really weird or posting spam, I'll just block them because it's not really worth it getting into a long drawn out argument trying to change that person's mind. I used to in the past, like try and DM a person directly and say, oh, why did you post this? This was like, I don't think that this really like follows the rules of the group, and let's have a long drawn out discussion about it. And it didn't do much of anything. And so, for example, in Ladies from Hackathons, there's like 16,000 members, and people will post things that really are spam, but they don't think that it's spam. And trying to change their mind wasn't really worth it, in my opinion. It wasn't really worth the time. And so you have to stay strong and know that kind of like, this is the code of conduct, this is what we're here for, and stay true to that. I think that, I'm not sure if that is exactly what you meant by criticism in your question, because I think like, do you want to elaborate on what you mean by criticism?
Actually, you like responded it like perfectly fine. I'm just poor at writing questions.
No, I totally understand. And I also like, I think honestly, it really also just comes with time. I used to get very sensitive at anybody being like, oh, like this event wasn't that good. And I was like, how dare you? And so I would say anything that you think is really useful and valuable and you want to get better at it, but you can hear yourself getting really sensitive about it, just do it over and over so that it doesn't sting as much. It's like that's the advice that people say for like sales or like VC fundraising too. Like you'll get a lot of rejections and no's and negative feedback. And if you just keep doing more of it, they hurt less and they sting less.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks. Cool. Let me get back to the next section of the Community 101. Okay, so yeah, so now you're like, yes, great, Shreya, I'm on board. I'm gonna start with a community. Now, how? I guess there's one more, that's why. So one thing that people often ask me is they're like, what do I do with this community? Like once I have this group, maybe you wanna build a software product, not just this group, but it's related to it. So back to that clothing example, you have a group of a bunch of people who talk about what clothing they like, they give each other recommendations, they share links, they share new brands. But you're like, this isn't actually what I wanted to do. I wanted to build like Stitch Fix for NG and for Gen Z. So if you have that idea, then before you have launched the app, this group is people that you can survey, you can user test, you can show them prototypes, you can get feedback, you can get a lot of their insight and input on how you can make the product better. Then when you launch it, those people are people that you've been talking to for like 6 months, or let's say, and so they can be your earliest customers, they can be advocates, they can share the link with friends. Then let's say some of them sign up and they pay for your product. Then after that sale, maybe those people are going to be really active and they'll spread the word to their friends, they'll give you extra feedback. I would always recommend like literally become friends with your most active customers, because then they'll feel comfortable giving you more critique and more pushback, and you'll be able to build a stronger startup and a stronger community out of it. Long term, I think that those people can be people that you like hire, you work with, this is, I guess, more for people who are beyond high school and college, but they can like angel invest in your company. But I think that building a strong community around some kind of shared interest or purpose is really powerful, because all you're really doing is you make all of those people who have that interest know who you are, and all of them start to meet each other, and the positive effects are just going to compound over years and years. So one question that I would love to ask, and I'd love to hear answers from people who didn't get to speak yet. How has a community helped you build something new? So have you ever been part of a community who helped you learn something or launch a project, maybe at a hackathon, or launch a startup? Anyone can unmute yourself.
I guess I could go. Oh, sorry. Did I interrupt someone?
I think so. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So I joined the Hack Club community, like their Slack, a couple months ago, as I was kind of getting into programming and STEM at that time. And just seeing everyone like constantly be making new projects, and like learning new programming languages and new concepts really inspired me. And just yesterday, actually, I finished my first like outside of school side project, like using new programming languages and things that I've learned. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Keep building stuff. Does anyone else want to share one?
I can go. So basically, I don't really know if this counts as a community, but like my family is really my community, like my parents and my sister. And when I was in, I think, 6th grade, I started getting really serious about coding. And I wanted to start my own club, like my own coding club, where I could help other people learn to code. And I think my parents and my twin sister, they were really important in helping me build start my own coding club at the library. And now I've been doing it for like 4 years, and now it's just like me and my sister. Like my parents don't help anymore, but I think they really helped me gain like the independence to start, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, our family is our first community. I think that like not everyone has parents who really support all of those goals, but if you do, it's really awesome to learn from them. And I think as you grow older, you realize like, okay, my parents are just people, but older. they're not like this far away thing. They've had careers, they've learned things, they've worked with people. And it's really cool to learn from all of their experience and knowledge. Nice. Okay, so this is kind of what I started to touch on before, but how do you start? So this is just based on my experience, and I think that communities with different purposes and intentions can work differently. But let's say you want to build a group of about 100 people who talk to each other, share resources and advice with each other, and are active in this group like every few days. So I would add about 20 people manually who you already know. So either they can be friends if you don't have enough friends who fit the purpose of the group. And like I keep going back to Facebook group and Slack because I think that they're platforms that people are really familiar with and they're easy to pick up. If you try and use a different forum website, people are less likely to stay engaged with it because they're just not going to it already. So you add those people. If you let's say you only have like 3 friends who like the same thing that you do, I would start finding other groups and communities, other forum websites, mailing lists, like Twitter and Instagram accounts based on what people are talking about, and directly message people who seem like they would be a good fit and kind of introduce yourself and ask if they want to join your community, and maybe have a phone call with them so that they feel like they're joining because of another person instead of just like a name. Think about how much you pay attention to somebody just sending you like a text who you don't know, or just like reading a sentence about someone versus actually hearing someone's voice or seeing them on video. It feels a lot more real. Like for everyone now, all of you who have turned on your video and we've said something, if you followed up and emailed me and asked me for a favor, I'd be like, oh, I recognize their name, I recognize their face, this feels really real. So if you're having a hard time with step one, try and just like manually start reaching out to potential people who would be able to join and who fit what you're looking for. Then step two is seeding the platform with introductions and discussion questions. Introductions are a really great way to get people started and make them feel welcome. I think that like I, for a while, didn't understand the point of this. And I was like, oh, why does every Facebook group and every Slack group start with just intros? I'm like sick of writing the same thing. But I think that the value comes in each person says a little bit about who they are, why they're in the group. And then you get to see, okay, which people could I introduce to each other? What is everyone looking for? Are there patterns? Are 80% of people saying that I want recommendations about X, and that's why they all came to the group? That kind of helps you as the group leader figure out what should we discuss and what kinds of resources should I give to people. Then interview them on a 15-minute call. So that kind of goes back, like you might have done it earlier if you had to add a lot of people you didn't know. But if you didn't, I think that after you start having people talk, that's a good time to message people directly and get to know them and understand why are they in the group, what are they hoping to learn and get out of it. And then at the end of the call, ask them for people who they would recommend to add. Your best bet is going to be just like, you start with this seed group, they add friends, they add people that they know who are a good fit, those people add people they know who are a good fit, and that's how it grows over time. If you build a community while you build some kind of like media like an Instagram or Twitter, people also hear about it through just you talking about and sharing interesting knowledge about this topic. And so then they find you, but you want to do both. You want to kind of make it so that people find you and you look for them. And then the last piece is just providing continuous value. So I really love doing some kind of like a regular repeated event. If you can do something weekly, every 2 weeks, every month, it can be something social. It can be like a talk or discussion. It can be kind of whatever. There's a lot of different formats and themes. You can look up some more and find out what those are. But giving people these shared experiences that they can do over and over really helps people keep seeing the same faces and feel like they're more connected to the rest of the community. So I would love to now try out our hand at coming up with these shared experiences, because this is, I think, a little bit of the magic of starting a community. Like, what should people actually do? What's a good way that they can connect with each other over and over? So I think that this is kind of where you can get creative. So I came up with some examples, but then I'd love us to also brainstorm a few. So let's say you're building a personal goal tracking app, and you're like, Shreya, how do I create a community around this goal tracking app? So let's say you make a community that's all about people who are like planning their lives, and they love to like make spreadsheets of their life goals and plans, and they're just the kind of people who are like maybe like checking their steps every day and things like that, people who are quantifying everything they do. Maybe the experience is that a different member shares like the way that they plan out their goals in life once a week. And it's like Friday evening, everyone's just hanging out. It's like kind of half party, half workshop. And you do that once every week. And then over time, people really start to meet each other and get to know each other. Another example, let's say that you are building like a B2B, business to business startup where makeup brands can connect with suppliers. So basically like you are connecting with the factory who can produce the actual makeup that you want to make. So maybe the experience is that once every week you have an AMA or an Ask Me Anything, where a successful founder who started a makeup brand or someone who is an executive at one of these factories or one of the people who produces the makeup comes in and leads a session where they just like answer people's questions and tell them about their job and tell them about their industry. So I would love to see, does someone have any kind of startup or product or community idea that they want to run, and they're trying to figure out what's the experience that people could do over and over, and we can kind of get the knowledge of the group. You can unmute yourself and say it out loud if you have your product. Yeah.
Okay, hi. So, one of my friends and I, we were thinking of starting a club for student athletes because I know like high school, as you get like further and further along in high school, you progressively start taking harder classes. So time management becomes a big issue, especially when you do sports and you have to dedicate time to doing sports as well as homework and other extracurriculars. So my friend and I wanted to start a club to help student athletes like manage their time and like teach skills to help manage time and stuff like that. And I think it would be a good experience so everyone can share different methods of how they like manage their time and people can see what works best for them.
Nice. So yeah, I feel like an experience for that could be that maybe a lot of the members who are listening are people who are like freshmen and sophomores, and the people who are presenting what they figured out are juniors and seniors, and a different person each week kind of goes through the breakdown of when they're working out, when they're training, when they're going to class, and when they're doing homework. And yeah, what other ideas do people have for how like shared experiences?
Just question, are you asking us how we would give ideas to Caitlin or our own ideas?
Yeah.
Oh, I was asking which one are you asking, or should we give ideas to Caitlin, or are you asking us to share our own ideas?
No, giving ideas to Caitlin, just like, are there any other ideas for potential experiences for that specific group?
Maybe you could gather everybody together by having like some sort of sports game. So if you wanted to do something once a week, you could start the beginning before like diving into somebody's personal strategies. You could start with like a soccer game or some sort of workout class or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like that would be really fun. And then it could be like a different one each time, so that people are sharing those different games and breaking out of what they usually do. Cool. So I wanted to give a little bit of a warning. I know that we're getting kind of close to the end, and so we're going to go to the kind of interactive part where you can do it yourself after this. But my warning is that bigger is not necessarily better. I think that what a lot of people learn when they try and manage communities that have a few thousand people is they start to feel really anonymous because people don't know enough of the other members. And so you kind of feel like you're just like a face and you're drowning in it. So this is if you're building a startup, but I would recommend that you monetize the product or service that's bringing people value, not the community itself. So I don't know if the high school people have seen this, but there's a lot of companies nowadays that are trying to be like, oh, spend $19 a month to join our membership community. And everyone's trying to sign people up in all these different membership communities. And they're all kind of providing similar things. They're like, oh, network with other people in your industry and look at our workshops and blah, blah, blah. And the problem is that community that they put people in after they pay for it, inevitably, if more people sign up and like it, it'll just get bigger and bigger. And as it gets bigger and bigger, each individual member they'll know a lower and lower percentage of the other members. So if, like with the examples I showed before, if you're trying to build an app or if you're trying to build a startup, the community is a great way for you to get these different values of user testing, customers, feedback, learning from them, working with them. But that doesn't mean that you should like have people pay to join your community, because it makes it really hard to keep the quality bar high if you just let in people because they paid for it and not because they found a lot of value from it. So that was my little spiel. But now I'd love to move to kind of the interactive component of this. I found this awesome community canvas online that a few basically like consultants in the community space created. There's 3 sections. You want people to have a shared identity and then have shared experiences within a certain structure of the community. So this is a lot of different sections, and so I created a simplified one that we can work on today. So in this mini canvas, I have, if you click mini canvas, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and share the link, and then you can see all the questions you can fill out yourself to build your own community and answer, why does this community exist? Who is it for, and how do we select those people? How do we define success? Like, what do we hope people get out of it? How do new members find us and join? What happens in our community that's like the shared experience they do over and over? And then what channel or platform do we use to communicate? So that would be like Facebook groups or Slack. So I'm gonna stop sharing and then send this link. So cool, here it is. So if you want to check it out, you can make a copy and then you can fill it out yourself. Normally I would have people like break out, but I think that we're not going to get too much time to do that. So I'm gonna instead just open this up and look at it, and then start to think about what the answers to your questions would be for your own community. And I'll show some kind of brainstorming questions you can think about. And I would love to just do another round of Q&A based on these. So. Okay, so while you're filling this out, a few things to keep in mind, and if you do it afterwards, obviously that's cool, you have this. So think, is the purpose and identity really clear and well defined? So it's really easy to make a purpose for your group that's very kind of like, it's just too wide and too far reaching. I see a lot of people be like, oh, I want like women to be like happy and better and make friends and also have success in their careers and also have like success in their mental health and then get healthy. And it's like, you're trying to solve all the things. Instead of trying to solve all the things, define like, who is this, what is this group actually for? If we had to pick one thing that people would get out of it, what would that one thing be? Where do we hope that each member is 6 months from now that they might not have been without this community? So another question to ask is, can you see the community structure achieving its stated goals? So one thing to remember with that like shared ritual that you do over and over is, okay, is that actually going to lend itself to whatever our goal is? So if you have a group where you really want people to make friends and you want them to connect with each other and develop strong relationships with one another and friendships, but then the shared event that you decide to do is a lecture, and you bring in a different person to give a lecture, and you use like Zoom in not this style where I can see your faces, but in the other style where you can only see the presenter, how is that actually helping people make friends? You're not. You would instead want to do some kind of social. There's this cool platform called icebreaker.video if you want to check it out, that puts people in one-on-one pairs. Make sure that that thing you're doing over and over actually like achieves that goal. Another question is, what are some more potential onboarding channels for members? This kind of goes back to that question where people are like, how do I get those first few people? I have no idea where to find them. Just brainstorm, like, right, you have the whole internet at your disposal. A lot of people write about or share or talk about the things they're interested in. Don't be afraid to like, if somebody has a YouTube channel about the topic that your group is about, try and find them and cold email them and just be like, hey, I saw that you have a YouTube channel about like home gardening, and I just started a home gardening Slack group, and I really want to grow my own tomatoes, and that's my goal for the summer, and so I'd love to invite you into the Slack group to like give a talk. That would be really cool, but I think that a lot of people assume that they'll say no, and so they don't even try to reach out to them. But you should try and reach out to them. Yeah, what other experiences and rituals could you add? You don't have to just have one, but I would recommend starting with one first so you don't get overwhelmed by like just trying to do a million events. And the last thing is this platform well suited to this community? So I always recommend like Facebook groups and Slack, but it might not be the best thing if you have a community that's usually on a different platform. Like maybe the people that you're talking to are way more comfortable with email, or maybe they're way more comfortable with Instagram, and so you might want to put it somewhere else. Just remember that that's going to change the way that people talk. If you have like just a group chat of people, they won't really be able to have different categories of conversations in the way that they would in Slack, for example, because you have channels based on different categories. The last slide is just some further reading and some recommendations. And so I'll share this PowerPoint with the organizers so that they can send this out to everyone at the end. But I'll stop there. And I'd love to just hear any questions that people have in the last few minutes.
Shreya, I have a question. So I'm running a book club for the summer, and I really like the community canvas that you've shared. And you just now talked about not letting your community have too broad of a scope, like not trying to accomplish too much. But given that the group I'm like running is very, very specific, like read books within a group of people, do you have any insights of like how I should be filling out the community canvas? I don't even know what I'm asking about. I just like I didn't think about like building a community canvas for my book club, but now that I see it, I think it's a really good idea. But when your like group is pretty specific, and I'm not like trying to monetize anything, I just want to get people together to read. How should I think about maybe extending the value of this group?
Yeah, I think that I think that all of those communities are communities, just that you might want to have a super high bar for letting someone in, and you don't really want to grow that quickly. But if there's like a person who is a good friend or who's really interested in the same topics, then maybe you would consider letting them in. So I would figure out, is there a theme to your books? Is everyone trying to learn about similar topics by the end of it? Or are you like, yeah, do you have like a set of themes and categories that you pick books from?
Yeah, okay. Those are good points to think.
Yeah, like I think so. Figure out kind of like what are our themes and categories that, like, most book clubs, I feel like people want to simultaneously learn about new things and then hang out with their friends and get to know them. And so if those are figure out if there's some other purposes too, and then say, okay, maybe our book club meeting is once a month, but people want to keep in touch between that once a month because it takes a while for them to read the books, but we also just like hanging out and getting to know each other. And so if you know that, then maybe think about, what else could we do? Could I put us in a group chat in between? Could I put us in an email list in between? Maybe we could have like a shorter check-in halfway through to kind of motivate people to finish the book, because I often see with book clubs, like, people will all read the first one and then like half will read the second one and then the whole thing will die. Because people are just like, oh, life got busy. And it's really easy to say that. And so try and figure out, like, how can we cheer each other on, keep each other on task, maybe like have a check-in point. And then also, like, how can we make this deeper? How can we make this go farther? How can we think about these questions and topics more and not just like passively read it?
Shreya, can I add a comment?
Yeah.
Hi everyone. I went to college with Shreya, so yeah. The way I learned community building is it's very simple. It's two things. It's you identify what a community needs and what the individuals need, and then number two is you act around it. So I think, Shreya, I think a lot of your suggestions around, like, hey, just DMing people and like genuinely getting to know people is honestly the biggest part of it, right? Is like, for instance, for the book club, is like, yeah, what do people need, right? Like, as you gather this group of people, what are they really juiced up about? Like, where are their hearts and minds, you know? And if there's a need for a way to stay in touch before then, like, boom, then you have something to act around. Like, for me, I'm building this dance-based mental health community, and I'm in the process of figuring out, like, what are the right experiences. But it's all about that process of, like, really just asking questions, like, what do your people need? So that's one of my big takeaways from this.
Love that. Yeah, I love it. I feel like that's like the you want to really develop that personal connection so that there's a mutual understanding and you're all helping one another achieve similar goals. I'm gonna hand it to Shivali so you can wrap up because it's 6. If you want to say anything. Oh, it's muted again. Sorry.
I promise I'll get better at this. Thank you guys so much for coming to this workshop, and I just loved hearing all of your ideas and projects you guys are working on. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. We, like I said before, we have a workshop tomorrow, and we have a workshop on Sunday, and you guys will be emailed to the recording if you missed anything for this workshop. And yeah, I hope to see you guys all on our community Slack and just at our future workshops. Thank you so much for coming.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.